Well, do you know, we are in this region, and also, of course, in larger parts of the Netherlands, we have continuously struggles and dealing with water issues. So, the Netherlands in the delta. And I want to talk with you today about a new way how to deal with water. Do you know maybe the story of Hansje Brinkers? I don't know, he's not famous in France. It's not a football player or a rugby player. But Hansje Brinker, he was a young Dutch man, and he was cycling along the dike in the Netherlands. You know, he was cycling. And in one moment, he saw in the dike, water was pouring out of the dike. So Hans immediately stood off his bike, put his stump into the dike, and he saved us. Otherwise, we won't have been anymore. That's why the importance for water, it's not only important for our country, but it's also very important for our agricultural management. Fresh water, because most of the plants like fresh water, they need fresh water. And do you know that only 2.5% of the total volume on Earth of the fresh water is only fresh water? And of this 2.5%, only 40% is we can use. That means only 1% of the total volume of water we can use. So fresh water is very precious, it's very scarce. We often say fresh water is the new gold. And because of this valuable fresh water, we need to take it very, to deal it with a lot of care. And we have to facing a lot of challenges. Challenges because of climate change. We see drought, we see heavy rains, floodings, but we see also salinization. And salinization is, of course, that is getting more and more salt into the water. Maybe you remember last year, it was dry. And for example, in the province of Zeeland, it's in the province in the southwest part, the farmers were only harvesting 5,000 kilograms of onions. This yield was far below the normal average of 50,000 kilograms. So you can see that a shortage of fresh water has enormous consequences for yield. And of course, you know already the problems with wine in France. But also floodings. This area, 2 years ago, there were floodings, there were heavy rains. 160 millimeters were falling in a few hours. And of course, there was fun in the city because the people were swimming in open tunnels. But in the fields near Alkmaar, there are a lot of cabbage and lettuce. And all these crops were destroyed because the roots were suffocated. And then we have salinization. You see it on the left picture. This is a field in Friesland. Friesland is a province in the northern part, famous from the Elfstedentocht, 200 kilometers of ice skating. But this is a farmer, and this farmer didn't know there were salt problems in his fields. The farmer is growing sweet potatoes, and he has also dairy cattle. And he's also growing broccoli. And in the very dry year of 2018, he was seeing that his grass was not growing very well. Well, he said, well, maybe something for the young calves. They can grass there. So he put the young calves there, and they were eating it, and suddenly the calves were getting sick, and they died. The veterinarian was coming, and he didn't understand, why are my calves sick? The veterinarian also didn't understand. Half a year later, they had a discussion with a water board. That means the water authority. In Friesland, it's an own language. It's called waterskip. And they were completely flabbergasted. They didn't understand. They said, why are you grazing your calves there? It's much too salt. It's like seawater. But the farmer didn't believe. And it started analyzing, and it was truth. He didn't recognize salinization because it has the same symptoms as drought. On these 2 hectares, no crops will be grown anymore, and no cattle will graze there. I will show you some pictures of drought. You see, this is last summer. You see the red area in Europe, and it's also, of course, in France, but also the Netherlands, Belgium, Italy, Spain. And it means, the red means that only 5% of the moisture is available in the soil. 5% of the maximum potential capacity of water. And what's happening then, the soil is getting very dry, shrinking, settling, cracking. The soil quality is deteriorating. It's getting worse and worse. And also the problems, when you have dry soils, it cannot transport water anymore. So if you have some rainfall then, it doesn't have to be very excessive, then you get also floodings. I think you have seen this also in France, but last week also in Italy, very dry rain and immediately floodings. Well, this is the Netherlands. The Netherlands is a delta. And you see, we have real problems with salinization near to the sea. And there are 2 types of problems. You see the northern part and the southwest part, that's the province of Zeeland. And there we have salinization very near the roots of the plants. It's almost reaching the surface. We have also in the midst, you see the blue one, that's in the province of South Holland. And what we have there, we see there is salinization in very deep layers, and through cracks in the soil, it flows up, and then it comes like small fountains. Of course, we have a lot of rivers in the Netherlands, and what we have already seen in dry summers, that the water of the river, the water of the river is getting lower and lower, and the seawater is invading. And so we have also getting salted water from the sea. And you see our, let's say, treasure, the IJsselmeer. That's the big, let's say, lake between near Dronten also, you see, and also there's also salinization. And it's very important for our drinking facilities, water drinking facilities. So salinization is coming up, and we can't collect any water anymore sometimes. So it is a big problem because of drought. All these problems deteriorate. Now, you see, how can we preserve salinization in the fields? How can we prevent it? And it's done, normally it's done by a layer of fresh water. Because the layer of fresh water is lying upon the salted and the brackish water. Because of the gravity, the salted water and the brackish water is going down. But because of when there is drought and dry, the plants are evaporating, and using the fresh water, and it's getting thinner and thinner, the layer. And one time it breaks through. And then the saltish water and the brackish water will reach the root, and the roots will burn. And if they burn, they cannot take any water anymore. You see the same symptoms as with drought. That's why it's often not recognized. So it's very important that we preserve this layer of fresh water. It must be thick enough, even during drought times. But what was the main strategy of the Netherlands to cope with water? The main strategy was disposal of water. What was happening when there was rainfall, for example, in the east? Then, the rainfall was in the fields, were drained, it was going to ditches, to canals, to rivers, and then we dispose it into the sea. And of course, that's a pure waste. Do you know that our disposal, we can dispose in the Netherlands 18,000 cubes of water each second? And that's pure waste, because I've said fresh water is the new gold. That's why we don't have to dispose it, we have to collect it. That's the most important. You don't throw away gold. But the problem is, of course, there is an imbalance. An imbalance between when there is a supply of water and when there is a demand of water. During autumn and winter time, we have an abundance of water. But in summer and spring, there is a shortage. So you know, there is an imbalance between supply and demand. Maybe you already have some logistic lectures, maybe in Dronten even. Then you can solve this with storage, a stock point. So we need to save the water during winter and autumn and to store it on a way. And then we can use it when it's needed. That is the principle of our new way of dealing with water. But it takes quite a different mindset, because my grandfather and even his grandfather, they always used to, oh, if you have water, get rid of it. Get rid of your fields because you have problems with it. And because there was enough water, they didn't care about losing some water to the river and to the sea. This new approach is based on 4 principles. Collection instead of disposal. Containment in the fields. And then you can preserve this fresh water layer. That means containment, you put it into your fields. And it's also for an improvement of your growing, of your crops. Third one is to store it when you don't need it. You can store it in silos, you can store it in ditches, and maybe store it underground. And at last, you must use it very efficiently. No more waste of this precious fresh water. And of course, a farmer has to manage this whole system, because he has to work with a whole new system. He has to have a device or a management tool in which he can use his iPhone or his iPad to control the whole system of techniques and data and software to control this. I show you some pictures of this system. First, what we are using in this system is a controlled drainage. That means there is a main pipe, you see the main pipe, in which we connect the old drainage. And then we can collect the water. And we collect it in a collector's pit, and then we can vary the level of water into the fields. That's the first. Of course, we need an emergency valve. So when, for example, there is heavy rains, we need to open it and we have to get rid of all the excessive rain. Because too much rain in your fields, for example, with very expensive crops like sweet potatoes or tulips or lilies, that costs too much money, Then we get problems. Then, of course, step 2 is underground storage. Because water is so voluminous, we need to store it for a large part under the soil. In the Netherlands, in this area, we can do it at about 60 to 100 meter deep. And we use pipes to inject the water. And then we also need pumps to take it out. And it is a sort of balloon, which is increasing. This balloon is increasing when injecting, and it is shrinking when you take it out. The water authority or the water board, they are very strict. They say, because you're working with chemicals, etc., you must prevent polluting of the water. So you need also some filters in order to clean the water. And of course, not every soil is very suitable for this. Because if you have a sandy soil, then the water will drain away and you can collect it anymore. The balloon, it's picked, and it's open. So you must have, for example, in ideal situations, you put it between 2 layers of clay. And then you can collect it. And last but not least, we are going to use drip irrigation. And normally, in France, you have your pivots. I've been growing tulips in France, in Bordeaux area, and we have large pivots. But in Holland, we have also sprinklers, and we call haspels. They are somewhat smaller than the pivots. But the efficiency of this traditional irrigation system is about 60%. So 40% of the water use of the water is lost. With drip irrigation, you only lose about 20%. So you have an efficiency of 80%. That is quite an improvement. But the advantages of drip irrigation is also that the soil, you can keep the soil wet by giving every day a small quantity of water. And then your soil gets wet, stays wet, and your transportation capacity of your water is better. And of course, drip irrigation needs less power to pump the water to the valves. So it uses much less energy. So less gasoline is needed. And gasoline is also very expensive, so that's why this system is very good. Of course, there are some problems. It's a lot of money you need to invest. It's also the birds can pick it, But if, for example, if you want to weed, you can damage it. And the reuse of this system is very difficult nowadays still. But they're trying to improve that. Maybe you think, well, that's an easy system. Why didn't they do that already? Well, it's not so easy as it seems. One of the most important things, it's a very expensive system. Why expensive? You need pipes, pumps, pits, electronics, software, etc. to steer the whole system. So quite some investments are needed. The water authority or the water board, they have regulations, but the regulations don't match the innovations because we are not used to store water. So it's very bureaucratic and it's very difficult to, let's say, to make this innovation work with them. It costs a lot of time and a lot of sweat and, let's say, a lot of talking. And of course, if you have precision agriculture, what is the problem of precision agriculture? It's that the communication of all the different system elements. For example, the technology, the data, the software, it has all to communicate. And that is very, let's say, not always optimum at this moment. And last but not least, the farmer. Because the farmer, he must work in a total different way. He must think otherwise. He has to think, okay, I don't have to get rid of my water, I need it. And he has to be proactive in his work. But keeping on going with the old way is a dead-end street. So that's why this new approach will lead to a more resilient and a more reliable farm management system in which food and crop is guaranteed. And it's also for society, because food availability will become an issue the coming years, and also the price of food. This whole system is demonstrated, developed and tested on an arable farm in this area. It's an arable farm of 30 hectares, and the farmer, he is realizing this project with the help of his partners, the suppliers of chemicals, etc., and other elements, but also his stakeholders, the bank, municipalities, province, but also the research institutes. So we are really working on it. And maybe if you have some time, you can also visit this farm, because it's very interesting to see all these techniques and the difficulties also and the challenges. So you are invited, and maybe by your teacher, And maybe you don't know, but I'm also a part-time teacher at Eres Hogeschool. So the Eres, so we can arrange it. This was my presentation for you. We can face all the climate change. We can face all these challenges regarding drought, floodings, heavy rainfall, salinization. And you know, there's a big opportunity for the farmer or the grower, because he has a new crop. And that new crop is called fresh water. Thank you very much.